Good morning and welcome to Live from FM 91, conversation and performance with some of the area's finest musicians and visiting guest artists. I'm your host, Brad Cresswell, and we are coming to you today from the Dana Performance Studio at WGTE. Now, you may have heard Toledo Opera is putting on a couple of one-act operas. It is a double bill, as they call it, the opera Suor Angelica, or Sister Angelica, and Cavalleria Rusticana, which translates to rustic chivalry, one opera by Giacomo Puccini, whom we all know and love from operas like La Bohème and Tosca, as well as the one-act opera Cavalleria Rusticana by Pietro Mascagni. And I've got three of the powerhouse singers here to talk to me about it and to share some of their talents this morning. Also, Geoffrey McDonald, who is the conductor of the double bill. This is happening tonight, by the way. It's at 7:30 p.m. tonight at the Valentine Theater. Also, Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock p.m. at the Valentine Theater, and you can get tickets at toledoopera.org. Let's start with you, Jeff McDonald. Have you been here before?
This is a return performance with Toledo Opera. I was here a few years ago for the Ballad of Baby Doe.
Very good. I know now, who else has been here before? Jill, you sang Tosca here, right?
I did. I was here back in 2014 to sing Tosca. Yes, that was my debut with the company.
So speaking of debuts, you're also doing a debut, Brian, here with your role of Toledo. Now, a couple of you are doing double duty. You're in both of the operas, but of course there are no big swashbuckling tenor roles in Suor Angelica,
Thank
Sister
God.
Angelica. So you just get to hang around and, watch them rehearse.
That's right. It's been a joy, too.
Yeah, but this is your first time doing Toledo, yeah?
Yes.
And your first time in Toledo?
Yep. First time with Toledo Opera, first time singing the role, and I'm having a blast.
Yeah? It's been treating you well.
Oh, yeah.
Lauren, what about you? Now, from Milwaukee, you're a good Midwestern raised voice.
Yes, it feels good to be performing in the Midwest, not too far from home. This is my debut in both of the roles I'm singing. Principessa, which I've sung quite a bit in scenes, but never in a full production, and also Mamma Lucia.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to get a sample of some of your contributions to the operas in just a moment. But let's talk about the whole idea of putting these two operas together. Now, Suor Angelica is already part of a trilogy of operas by Giacomo Puccini, and Cavalleria Rusticana usually is paired with another verismo or realistic opera by Leoncavallo, I Pagliacci. You see that double bill all over the world. Who wants to talk a little bit about how these two particular operas fit together?
Well, I think that we're now in a time of opera where post-pandemic, we're all having to do some reimagining and recreating. And when I was approached myself about this project and the idea of doing Suor Angelica and Cavalleria Rusticana, both roles which I have done, I was like, yeah, I think it's a great pairing. The last time I did Cavalleria Rusticana was also paired, to your point, Brad, with the first opera in Puccini's Trittico called Il Tabarro. So that was first, and then we ended with Cavalleria. And so I think what's beautiful about this pairing is that we start in an other world. Suor Angelica takes place in the 1600s, and the orchestral colors and the cloistered community of nuns that we all live within is of another world. I tend to think of it as being very sky and cello dominated. We have moments in that piece where it definitely comes back to earth. But for Suor Angelica, she's of a completely different creature than Santuzza. And so the idea of starting with Suor Angelica and then moving after the intermission back down to earth into something as real and verismo as Cavalleria Rusticana is, it's a very perfect storytelling. It's a wonderful evening of storytelling.
Yeah.
And then you end also featuring this fantastic chorus of Toledo Opera, because Cavalleria, they are their own character.
Mm.
And they really get to shine in that way.
Yeah.
So I think these types of off the road a little bit pairings from the standpoint of the traditional operatic pairings, I think is a really creative way to bring opera to the audiences now. And you're not in the theater for over 3 hours.
You're going to bring some of your artistry as well to us, Jill Gardner. And tell us a little bit about what you're singing for us this morning.
Well, the aria that I'm singing this morning is Suor Angelica's aria, Senza Mamma, which literally translates without your mother. And it is one of the most poignant arias that I sing. And it's because it is so intimate and it is so provocative of the moment that Suor Angelica finds out the horrible news that the only reason that she's been living was to not even necessarily be reunited with, but to find out that this son that she had and had to give up is okay, and that he's living and doing well. And she finds out the opposite, that he is dead, and all of the 7 years that she's been waiting to receive this word has been for naught. And she's faced, I think, with the true loss of life. And it is riveting. And I think whether it's to the audience, whether it's your son, your husband, your parents, all of us in that moment can really be impacted by what that kind of loss means. And from there, she sets on to a journey to be reunited with this baby. And I just think the enlightened part of her as a character is that no matter what has happened to her in her earthly existence, Suor Angelica is trying with all of her power and might to follow a spiritual path and to find that grace and that union beyond the veil. And in our production, we definitely show that, and it is riveting. So you can see I care deeply about it.
You do.
I care deeply about it.
That's good, because, then people pay attention, right? People,
yes. Well, that's the validity of opera.
Right.
That's why we still do it.
Well, let's hear that aria, Senza Mamma. This is soprano Jill Gardner, joined at the piano by our friend Kevin Bylsma, performing music of Giacomo Puccini from his opera Suor Angelica here on FM 91.
Senza
Jill Gardner, who is starring with Toledo Opera in Suor, Angelica by Giacomo Puccini, as well as Cavalleria Rusticana by Pietro Mascagni. That's happening tonight, by the way, at 7:30 p.m. You can get your tickets at toledoopera.org. There's a matinee performance Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Jill Gardner joined by Kevin Bylsma at the piano singing that excerpt from Puccini's Suor, Angelica. Jill, wonderful, beautiful performance and introduction. We thank you for that. One thing I do want to talk about, and I'm sure that you all have something to say about this, is how Toledo Opera has really made an effort to reach out into different facets of the community and maybe what we would characterize as underprivileged or underrepresented members of the community, and using the conversations that they have with them to bring these very storied, mainstay operas into the mainstream and make them relevant. I wonder if one of you can talk about Toledo's Opera's efforts, and maybe you didn't go into this with that thought in mind, but your idea of your role and the opera that you're singing in has grown, or perhaps the operas that you're conducting as well. You want to jump in here and talk a little bit about it?
Sure. I'm happy to, first of all, applaud Toledo Opera for its endeavors to bring some of the themes that come up in the stories that the opera deals with, or the operas deal with, and connect them with contemporary life. I mean, I think that is it's not just a nice thing to do, it's an essential thing to do in this art form. And not at all because it's just a play for the relevance of the art form. There's always this kind of panicked, breathless talk about that within the industry of, how we make it relevant. It really isn't that. It's that opera is a really fantastically eloquent way to deal with these kinds of themes. It puts them forward for the audience. It holds them up into a particular kind of light, if I can be allowed the metaphor, at a particular pace that allows people to really reflect on them. In these operas, I think the issue or issues of women's ability to choose their own destiny and their relationship to the community that they are a part of is really central. Certainly, as Jill put it, Suor Angelica is in a convent not necessarily of her own choosing, and yet makes a community for herself with this incredible. She's just an incredible character. She's so real. She's so alive. And that's a credit to the music. It's a credit to the story. Santuzza, the kind of main plot driver of Cavalleria Rusticana, is also really not quite in control of her fate. She has, when we meet her, been effectively excommunicated from the church because of effectively an extramarital affair or a premarital affair, however you want to frame it. And that is not a punishment that has been meted out to her male counterpart. And the reasons for that are obvious. And they belong, I think, still in a contemporary conversation about, the inequities that women face in contemporary life.
Conductor Geoffrey McDonald. I want to talk with you, Lauren, briefly, because you're going to sing next. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You said you were from Milwaukee, right?
Yeah, I grew up in just north of Milwaukee and spent a lot of my life between Milwaukee and Chicago, which we also connected on. I was a young artist at Lyric Opera of Chicago for 4 years, and this is kind of my first season as a main stage artist. This summer, I was still an apprentice singer at Santa Fe Opera, so I got to walk in right to a main stage experience with an incredible team and incredibly visceral operas that both mean an incredible deal to me and in the trajectory of my career. And it's just been so lovely.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that Lauren has a bright future ahead of her.
Yes.
Oh, very much.
I hope.
Very much.
Very much.
Indeed.
Very much.
Now, you're singing two roles in each of these operas. You're singing the Principessa, and you're also Mama Lucia. Do you want to talk about what you're going to sing for us, an excerpt from the Principessas?
Yes, of course. Two very different characters at that. Yeah. I'm offering today the aria from Suor Angelica nel Silenzio that the Principessa, Suor Angelica's aunt, is the earth, or the real bringing it back down from the heaven moment that Jill was kind of mentioning before. And she is here to give Suor Angelica a piece of her mind and kind of represent the bad parts that we're that we're speaking about. And it is an incredibly even different than Senza Mama's visceral connection. It is also a very visceral anger and hurt and despair. And seems weird to say that I love singing it, but I really do. So I'm excited to offer it this morning.
Well, we do love hearing it. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yes.
Yeah. Lauren Decker, contralto. Do you call yourself a contralto? You have a
yes,
low voice. Okay. Lauren Decker with Kevin Bylsma at the piano here on Live from FM 91. That is contralto Lauren Decker performing music by Giacomo Puccini, a bit of the Principessa scene from the opera Suor Angelica, and Kevin Bylsma at the piano. Those operas, Suor Angelica and Cavalleria Rusticana, are being performed tonight. As a matter of fact, it's opening night at Toledo Opera. They're double bill. You can find more information at toledoopera.org. That's tonight at 7:30 p.m. or Sunday at 2 p.m. And as I mentioned, you can find info on the website. You can also find everybody's bio. I mean, we could spend time talking about everything that you've done, and it would basically be wasting time. We just want to talk about what you're doing here in Toledo and what you're offering. Lauren, magnificent voice.
Thank you.
How did you discover you wanted to sing?
I started singing in musicals in high school and thought I would go on to be a choir teacher. And my high school choir director was like, I think you should go into performance and not musical theater, classical music.
Yeah.
And I other than hearing it on the radio. I didn't grow up in a house that went and saw operas. So I went to school and kind of went just for voice and was going to decide what I was doing. And I actually saw a double bill, my first opera of Cavalleria, Rusticana, and I Pagliacci. And it was at Lyric Opera of Chicago, where I would go on to have my tenure as a young artist.
Not that I would recommend watching that opera for an intro to opera. It's not the best choice, but...
I mean, it moved me to tears. Yeah. Dolores Ojic sang Santuzza, and she actually has gone on to be a very, very important mentor in my career. And the ending of it, seeing her just on her stomach, I was in the family circle, and she was singing this visceral, heart-wrenching note, and I left, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that.
That was that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a story. It seems like sometimes these big opera stars waltz through and they're like, well, I wanted to be a high school teacher. I mean, even Luciano Pavarotti said that about himself. He thought he would be an insurance salesman or whatever. And then he became one of the world's great voices because, people believed in him and said something. So you're in good company, Lauren.
I feel very lucky to have had the people that I've had on my path kind of guiding me in the right direction.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. Now, this is unheard of. The one person who hasn't talked yet is the tenor. And that is Brian Cheney.
I resemble that remark.
Yes, you do indeed. That's okay. I can say that because I'm a former tenor myself, right? Brian Cheney is singing. You're only in one of the operas because the other opera, as we mentioned, doesn't have any guys in it.
That's right.
But you're singing a really difficult role, and it's a fairly short opera, but you've got some real crackerjack singing there to do this role of Toledo in Cavalleria Rusticana. Let me ask you, now he's kind of like in the role of the bad guy,
Yes.
in this opera. Can you tell us a little bit about Toledo and what you think of him and who he is?
Well, I love playing characters that are not like myself because it really allows you to go to places that you could only imagine. And so Toledo is in love with this woman, Lola, has been for a long time. And he left for a couple of years. And when he came back, she didn't wait for him. She hooked up with another guy, Alfio, the baritone. Of course, it's always a baritone. And, but love is love. The heart wants what the heart wants. And so they have this affair and they are found out. He is not a nice guy about it. He's not nice to anybody, and particularly Santuzza. And he finds himself in a situation where his mouth gets him into trouble, and he threatens Alfio, who is literally like a mob guy, in control, and has a whole team of dudes that are going to back him up. And at the end, I realize, oh no, I made a big mistake. And so what does a good tenor do? He calls for his mama.
Yeah, you do indeed. As we're about to hear,
right,
when you sing that aria. Tell us a little bit about this aria, because he has sort of a resignation to his fate.
Yes.
In this aria.
Oh, yes.
What's going on inside of his head?
Well, I think he's realized his mistake, pushing Alfio to a breaking point, and knows that he's no match for him. And so he is singing this aria to his mother, saying, please take care. If something were to happen to me, please take care of Santuzza.
Yeah.
Be a mother to her. And it's his final farewell.
Yeah.
Knowing that he goes off to die.
But the aria is a journey unto itself, really.
He
really starts out saying, I've drunk too much. And at the end, he's like, take care of her, So there's a trajectory there.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Cheney is the tenor singing the role of Toledo in tonight's Cavalleria Rusticana at Toledo Opera. He's going to sing that aria for us now. Kevin Bylsma is at the piano here on Live from FM 91. That's tenor Brian Cheney performing the aria sung by the character of Toledo at the end of the opera Cavalleria Rusticana. Kevin Bylsma was at the piano for that performance. I want to mention that tonight is the night, my friends. Toledo Opera is opening these two operas together, a double bill, Cavalleria Rusticana as well as Suor, Angelica, Sister Angelica. We've been talking about it, listening to some of it here on Live from FM 91. If you want to find out more information, not only about getting tickets for the opera, but also about the folks that I'm talking to, you can find all their info at toledoopera.org. I do want to say, Brian, magnificent performance, wonderful singing. You all are pretty good, I have to say. You know, it's nice to have good singers in the studio. Really, really nice. Brian, tell us a little bit more about yourself, because you do more than just sing opera. You've done Broadway. You've done all kinds of stuff. Just tell us about the other facet of your career.
Well, one of the great, wonderful, fortunate events in my life was to have the legendary tenor Jerry Hadley as my mentor. I'm his one and only protege, and was so lucky to have worked with him. And one of the things that Jerry taught me was to be a student of style and to sing with beautiful, consistent technique, but also understand style. And Jerry was a great crossover artist. And recently, I've embraced the fact that I can be too. Yeah. And so not only do I perform musical theater, and concert pops and of course classical music. But I've also dipped my toes into film and television as an actor. And so I'm very excited to be making my television debut on American Horror Story next week, actually on Wednesday. I'm guest starring in the first episode of the 11th season. I can't tell you much about it.
Now, hang on. This entire show is just so you could give us a spoiler about American Horror Story.
Well, I can tell you one thing, because I signed a bunch of non-disclosures.
Yeah.
Right. I have a really great scene with one of the stars of the show.
Oh, okay.
That's the only thing I can tell you.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
Heard it here first. That's wonderful.
But yeah, so I'm pursuing that as well as my other artistic endeavors.
Yeah. Well, it's not often that you see opera singers who are really invested in acting the way that I've seen all three of you doing this morning, and I really appreciate your coming in. This is turning into a really a must-see, must-experience kind of event, especially for audiences here in Toledo. I think if there's one last thing that you want to say to your potential audience, we'll go around the table and you can throw in your 2 cents. Let's start with you, Jill. What do you think?
I think to your point, I think we have a very special evening and matinee planned for this community. We've really committed into the process, and this music is very accessible. These are not operas that you would often hear, like what you're saying, for those that, if this would be your first time coming to the opera, I can assure you that what you will experience live will be life-changing and will cause, I just want through my performances to be able to allow people to go within and find that part of themselves that they can trust, that they can intuit and connect with, and particularly women, and recognize that even though, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So, we're still dealing with the issues that these particular operas portray within our contemporary society. But what I do think that we have to our advantage now is that if you want to commit and discover yourself and choose the path of freedom and enlightenment for yourself, you can. And that's what I would hope that the folks who come would connect to and be inspired to do.
That's wonderful. What do you say, Brian? Would you add to that?
I will absolutely add to that, because if you have not ever been to an opera, you have to come. Because there is nothing in this world like live operatic singing. It is so thrilling and exciting. It will leave you breathless. Your jaw will hit the floor, because it is the most incredible art form and that's quite frankly what got me into opera was, how does somebody do that? How does a human being make a sound like that, unamplified, over a full orchestra to a full house and still be heard? And it's the most thrilling, exciting thing. So we'll see you tonight. You've got to come.
It's like a sporting event where everybody dies, right? Lauren, you're up next. What do you want to say to our
hard
audience?
to follow up too. Really great points. From the surface level, these are beautiful shows with a beautiful set and beautiful performers and accessible, beautiful music that will, even if you don't follow with the super titles, you will absolutely feel it deep within you. But deeper than that, they are shows that speak to the human experience. I don't think there's a single person that couldn't relate to someone in one of these operas. And it's just a joy to share. It's a joy to make community, both with everyone on stage, behind the scenes, in the pit. And I hope you will join our community and come support Toledo Opera.
Now, you did make an important point. I mean, we heard you all singing in Italian this morning, but there are super titles, so people, need not fear that there's a language barrier. They can read exactly what it is that you're saying to each other in this performance. Maestro McDonald, I haven't talked with you a whole lot, but as a conductor with your hand in both of these shows, What's your perspective? What do you want to tell people about it?
Well, it's my job is more to listen than to talk, at least when I'm doing it right. So it's been a pleasure to hear my colleagues' very, very lovely and I think spot on remarks about why people ought to come. I'll just add on to it from my department. There is a chorus of people from the Toledo area. I think it's a pretty wide radius that the chorus draws from, and they are sensational. They are extraordinarily committed. The Toledo Symphony will be the orchestra of the house, and they are fabulous. So it's just there's no reason to stay home tonight or Sunday.
Well, we've given everybody a little taste of what's to come. I really appreciate having all of you here. Soprano Jill Gardner, who is performing in both operas tonight, in Suor Angelica, as well as in Cavalleria Rusticana, and also contralto Lauren Decker, who's also doing double duty as the Principessa as well as Mamma Lucia in Cavalleria Rusticana. And the tenor, Brian Cheney, who is performing the role of Toledo in Cavalleria Rusticana, and also the conductor, as I mentioned, of both of those productions, Geoffrey McDonald. I want to thank all of you for coming in today. I also want to throw a shout out to Kevin Bylsma for performing so nicely at the piano for us. Guys, thank you for joining us here on Live from FM 91.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Live from FM 91. The broadcast engineer for our program was Logan Cooney, who also handled our production mixing this morning. I'm your host and your producer, Brad Cresswell. Thanks for joining us today here on your public radio station, FM 91.